com, or on YouTube at youtube.com/BJD online. Today, we're going to talk about the Davos Dbags. What do you like, Dbags or ass hats? I don't know. What's better? We're going to talk about the gas stoves. Gas stoves are destroying the world. Every other week, it's something new. And how to challenge corporate wokeness. I have some ideas and some insight that may or may not work. I'm not entirely sure. But if you are watching on TikTok, come join the live chat. We're starting right now, and we'd love to talk to all of you. All right, I'm going to click here, and I'm going to send that. I don't even know it's there. I'm going to post. That's fine. And then we're going to just let that do its thing. Oh, and somebody's posting that. All right. And sorry about the noise. Okay, so Beth, good morning. Let's see who else is starting to come in here. Oh, Megan, good morning. Keith, morning. It's good to see all of you. I hope you all had an awesome weekend. Today is Monday, which I sometimes, wow, look at that hair. I got to go for a haircut today. Often I say Monday can be the best day of the week if you've kind of got your stuff together over the weekend, which I spent so much time organizing this weekend. I still got a bunch left to do. But for me, I feel so much better than how I did last week because now at least I have kind of a sense of whether I'm coming or going sort of thing. And that's why I do my weekly reviews. I get that from, for those of you who don't know, if you've ever read the book Getting Things Done, and for me, the two books that were life-changing from a productivity perspective were Getting Things Done and The Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande, which is why everybody always makes fun of me that I have so many checklists and I have so much automation is a large part of what I've been working on this weekend. And for somebody like me who's always trying to do 20 things at once or monitor many different projects, this live stream being one of them, trucking being another, the book and book promotions and interviews being another. Plus there's other projects I'm involved that people don't know about, other little side projects, startups, whatever you want to call, that I help with. Plus there's the podcasts that I produce. So it's really the structural organization, data management, automation processes. That's why I have one of these, so I can toggle between my different focuses, which changes my timers and all sorts of stuff. So that's a bunch of not nerdy stuff, but it is what it is. Trisha, good morning from Port Colborne. Good morning, Trisha. Jesse, good morning. Sonia, good morning as well. So, the Davos grift is on once again. What do you think they're going to talk about in Davos? Do you think they're going to talk about the tens of billions of dollars they're laundering through Ukraine? And they're probably going to do it with very corporatized, very political language of, we need to send more aid to help the people, which happens to be kicked back to political campaigns and whatever. But who knows? I would love to be a fly on the wall there. I'm sure we all would, but I think that's all starting to collapse around them. Apparently, Schwab is not there. He's not really. Captain Evil isn't there. I don't know if he's Captain Evil. I think he's just I don't know. I think it relates back to his maybe it's the ideological framing of his ancestry, Klaus Schwab. I mean, for example, we have, for those of you who are not in Canada, for those in the United States, our Minister of Finance, who knows nothing about finance, who's also the Deputy Prime Minister, which is never supposed to happen. You're never supposed to have the Deputy Prime Minister. It's always supposed to be separate from the second most powerful person in the world. So right now we're at Banana Republic corruption levels. Her name is, I hate the spelling of her name. I always get it wrong, and I don't really care. But Chrystia Freeland, who she is Canada's Nazi granddaughter is the best way to describe her. I think she likes that when she gets described as a Nazi, as Canada's Nazi granddaughter, because her grandfather was a propagandist for the Nazis in the Ukraine who actively volunteered to be part of that regime. So he was all in there. So I wonder when I'm going to get reparations from Chrystia Freeland. Can I sue Chrystia Freeland directly for reparations, given how the whole leftist political world ideology is everybody's guilty of the sins of their ancestry based on their race or culture or background or creed or whatever. So can't I get reparations out of Chrystia Freeland? Should I explore if I can sue her personally? Would you help crowdfund? Because we know Chrystia likes crowdfunding a campaign to sue her personally for reparations based on her cultural background and her family. I mean, I think that would be, that'd be kind of funny and entertaining. The one experience I had with Chrystia was a stupid name. She, or maybe it's just her. She was giving a talk before she got elected. She was giving a talk at the JCC, it's called, the Jewish Community Center in downtown Toronto. And knowing what her ties were and her background and all that, and this was the whole the Syrian war, which everybody seems to have memory hold and forgotten now. She was giving a talk there to the leftist scum in the Jewish community, the ones who put targets on our backs, right? The ones who I don't like at all. And there's many of us who don't like them. They're all the politicized people in the community. We call them the trash. But anyways, so Chrystia was giving a presentation there, or giving a talk, right? Like a town hall. She wasn't elected. She wasn't, Trudeau wasn't elected yet at that point. And somebody stood up and said, hey, I have a question. And he was young. And he said, because it's all about Syrian refugees. That's all they're doing, Syrian refugees. And he said, hey, I live in an area where there are people who are from Syria and not exactly friendly to the Jewish community. He's a young guy. And because I think the statistics were something like 96% of Syrians have anti-Semitic views or something like that. I think that was the statistic. So he gets up and says, I get called a dirty Jew all the time in my neighborhood now because of your refugees that you've brought here. What about my protection, the protection of other Canadians who are Canadian, who have, a variety of different religious backgrounds, and including mine specifically, where I'm being targeted? And Chrystia, the airhead, did the we got to help the Syrians. It's all about the Syrians. Like, she couldn't answer the question. That's how much of a dummy she is, right? Her and Trudeau, they're both airheads, and they're both just regurgitating a script. So I absolutely hate her. I think she's a piece of shit, actually, is the best way to describe her. She deserves no respect. She will never get respect from me, and she'll be treated like the dirt on the floor that she is. Sorry, I know, positivity. We got to be real, right? We can be positive, but also be realistic at the same time. So Chrystia, Canada's Nazi granddaughter, is at Davos, and I'm surprised that Klaus isn't going to be there, because Klaus is also the descendant of an actual Nazi. It's his father, if I'm not mistaken. So there you go, a left-wing German engineer who's a descendant of an actual Nazi is going to come and save the world for all of us. What could go wrong, right? They're such garbage. Oh, anyways, they are what they are. So I think we should watch for it. It's going to be quite interesting. Now, I don't know if any of these people actually have any sort of harbor negative ideals, or if it's just incompetence. Hanlon's razor, that never apply malice to that can be explained by incompetence. That maybe there's kind of a little bit of the two of them together. Megan says, I think Soros is not attending either. Yeah, the thing about Soros, Soros is a vegetable. There's nothing going on. The guy can't even put together a sentence. So I think the whole idea that, putting him up as this whole, mastermind behind all this stuff. He's been a vegetable for a while. He's basically got one foot in the grave. It's his son and Alexandra and all these other people that are just trying to exploit money out of him, I think is what it is. Trying to exploit money out of the estate. And everybody's a grifter. Everybody is corrupt. And does he, like, I've watched this, you know what? I'm going to park this. We're going to do an episode on Soros because there's three very interesting differing opinions on him. And George Gammon actually did one recently, which is more in line with what I'm thinking. Because remember, Soros used to be, like Gordon Gekko of Wall Street. He's the complete opposite of all the things that he's giving money to. Well, why would he be giving money to? And I think I know why, and it's not what we think. But anyways, let's get away from that little bit of negativity, and let's move on to the gas stoves. Gas stoves are destroying the world now. I'm not sure if you heard. That's the latest. I think gas stoves is leading to global cooling. Wait, I'm confusing the hysteria from the 1970s with modern hysteria. It's hard to keep track, right? Like it's always hysteria, a mass hysteria over something. Pleasure. Good morning, Ben. One topic I suspect will be up at Davos is biodigital convergence. Yeah, I think we really don't have to worry about that as much as we think, and that kind of ties into what I'm going to talk about next. Jason Laurie. David, good morning. Good to see you. He has to make an impressive entrance, or maybe the shot got him. I don't know what that means. Sorry, I missed your conversation there. When your finance minister needs a co-signer on her mortgage, yet somehow became a millionaire while in office, well, there you go. That's how the system. Like I can tell you how the whole corrupt system works and how the money works to proxy organizations and all of that. But it's pretty, for people who are in politics, they know exactly how it all operates. And the most amount of money, by the way, is provincial. So if you're in Canada, hold on, sorry about that. What just happened? I just lost my Instagram. Yeah, there you go. If you're in Canada and you want to be a corrupt politician and you want to, milk the system for money, it's actually on the provincial level, not the federal level. There's more restrictions on the federal level. So look at the net worth of many of your cabinet members in your provincial governance, and you'll see a few massive parabolic lines. It's quite entertaining. We know Krista Friedland has an intimate link to the WF. Yeah, well, she's on their board, or their advisory board, or something like that, right? And she should resign in disgrace just for that, right? That she's part of this global, we're going to be kind, we'll call it a global NGO that is engaged in political activism. And she's on their board, sorry. And she also wrote Soros's biography, who's one of the biggest donors to the WF. So it's a corrupt grift. They're all full of shit. When they talk about, poor people, they don't care. They don't give a damn. They care about consolidating power. I think, who was it? I think it was Tate who said this, and he was correct about this, that when people get into power, they start to get dopamine releases. The more power they get, the more power they can exercise. I've seen this with people in politics all the time, and you can see them how they change, right? Somebody once told me many, many years ago, before you get money or power, you need to sort out all the negative and know all the negative traits of your personality. Because if not, when you get either of those two things, it'll just amplify the negative traits of your personality. And a lot of these people don't realize they're psychopaths, so they get a little bit of power and they go a little crazy, right? And it's just dopamine hit after dopamine hit. And more power, more control, more importance, right? Because they're all very, very... If you ever meet people in politics, somebody told me a long time ago, and boy, was this right. I didn't understand it because I'm not this way, how insecure those people are, because they're basically corporate failures. They couldn't cut it in the public sector. There's no job that they could do that would address their ego's desire for importance. So what do? They go to politics, right? And that's why we see politics has changed into these cults of personality around people who are just failed in life, right? And you determine what you think is a failure in life. Some people judge it monetarily. I personally don't. Some people judge it by, academic contributions, being an author, being influential in society. Like, there's different ways to measure it. But these people all have nothing, and so they enter politics. Not everybody. There's a few good people in politics, like 4, maybe. There's not very many. Hey, Ryan, don't talk about Fight Club. Don't talk about that. It's like Fight Club. Yeah, nobody talks about Fight Club. Okay, just scrolling through your comments here. So the morning Bridget, morning Keith, gas stoves, I'm trans electric. First, Nazis tried to take over with the Third Reich. Then, when that failed, the EU, and now the WEF. Exactly. Like I said, another left-wing German who's going to save the world. We've seen this movie before. The radical left does tend to get quite concerning and violent. But anyways. Okay, so on this topic of the gas stoves, I think this is kind of there's going to be a template that I think that can evolve out of this. And it's one of those times I wish I had a whiteboard here, but at some point I'll figure out a way to incorporate a whiteboard in the lessons. But the gas stoves is a good example. So we've all heard the expression "get woke, go broke," right? We've seen a number of companies where their balance sheets and their stock value just plummets once they go woke. A good example was Gillette. Remember, Gillette lost $8 billion when they got into identity politics, and they decided, there's no more men or women. We're just going to have. Anyways, it's fuzzy, but I remember specifically what it is. I don't need to go into. You all remember that, and they lost $8 billion either in a quarter or in a year. I can't remember what it was. Well, we're seeing this again. This is what's happening with the gas stoves because, who's not saying anything? What is Scott Adams called? The dog not barking. Who isn't saying anything about all of this stuff? We need to end gas stoves and whatever. Who is silent? Who should be screaming at the top of their lungs? The gas companies. So if you're in Canada, Enbridge is an example of that, right? So it's the same collective brainwashing and hysteria that we saw during the 1970s with global cooling. We saw during the 80s, which was acid rain was the big thing, which has all been forgotten. And I guess the one victory would be the ozone layer, that the UN tackled ozone layer depletion, which was solved. So, sometimes there are also good outcomes, right? Not everything is bad, but it's the hysteria that is the problem, right? So all of these people are being you can if you've been in marketing, you've studied marketing, you understand the tactics that are used to manipulate people and cause them to slip into this mass hysteria. Or this brainwashing that they're doing. This is another example of it. And the latest, because they keep testing different messaging to see what sticks with people. And they'll always focus on the children. That's why when you see, city councilors in Toronto, like we have this trash, Wonton, whatever her name is, whenever she's losing an argument, it's, but the children, right? Because she's full of crap. She doesn't have an argument. She's been called out. So let's pivot over to children to try to emotionally manipulate the recipient. So the latest thing that's come out in the past 24 hours, I guess, is that gas stoves, so funny, gas stoves are what's caused asthma. Now, there's no data on that. The entire medical world for generations has had no idea what causes asthma. And what has caused the increase in asthma? I'm asthmatic myself, so I've gone through this a little bit. There's absolutely zero data, but it doesn't matter because they'll just get some fake journalist to write a blog for usually $500 to $1,500. That's complete nonsense. And then the legacy media or the fake news infrastructure will grab on it. They'll put it into one of these digital news wires. The digital news wire will release it, and then all the media conglomerates will start carrying it on their local feeds and just copy and paste that article in there, and then away the narrative goes, right? No data, no science, no nothing. It's just pure manipulation. Now, I'm asthmatic, and I never even lived in a home with a gas stove until I was in my 20s, 30s. I don't know. Like I had never had still don't have a gas stove. Never did. But yet somehow, maybe it's the next door neighbor's gas stove that caused me to have asthma without any data to prove it. So it's complete nonsense. But we know that this is the strategy. This is how they do it. They get a blogger posts it, somebody turns it into a press release, sends it to the digital news wires. All the local affiliates will then copy and paste it, and then it becomes, the wedge issue they can talk about for the day. And if it doesn't track well, so if people don't click like often enough online, then that gets abandoned by the cult that's doing this, and then they'll start. You'll watch. This is not going to go anywhere. My prediction, this goes nowhere. So they're going to try something else in the next week or so. Another rationalization behind the gas stoves once the asthma one fails to work. So how do we combat this? Well, remember I said the utility companies and Enbridge, for example, in Canada, or many, many places, they're not, they're silent about it. Where's the CEO of Enbridge on it? He should be screaming at the top of his lungs that this is our business model, right? The government is not going to take away our ability to generate revenue, because that's also your, if you're in the United States, 401ks or your RSPs. Those are retirement funds that they're crashing the value of our stock. So he has a fiduciary duty to speak out against wokeness. All these corporate entities, the directors of these corporations, have a fiduciary responsibility to speak out against this woke cult, which is going to destroy the value of their companies, yet they don't say anything. Why is that? I don't know. But if we start getting groups of people who are shareholders in this company, and often these companies, and often you'll probably need somebody with deep pockets to take a lead, or a few people with deep pockets to take a lead in each instance, should sue the crap out of them. Sue the companies, sue the directors, and sue them personally. Drag them through the courtrooms for violating their fiduciary duty as a shareholder. I'm a shareholder. You're intentionally, either through malice or incompetence, destroying the value of my investment. I'm taking you to court. And that's going to be the best way for people to start to push back against wokeness. Because this whole woke grift is all about money anyways. That's all it is, right? Deception and money from coming from bad places that shouldn't be here to manipulate people. Well, start forming groups of people who are investors in different companies that are going woke, and just sue the pants out of all of them. Watch how quickly they'll change and they'll start to speak up. That's the power you have as a shareholder, especially if you're, a primary shareholder. If you're somebody who has like a significant amount of investment, that's what you need. You need somebody who's got, a lot invested in the company, and that person will need a team of people who are investors in the company, shareholders in the company, and just start a campaign to destroy the reputation of the executive of that the executives of that company and the directors. That's how you do it. So, just a suggestion, and I think the gas companies is a good way to start with it. And we saw a little bit of that from Ron DeSantis. I don't remember which company it was. one company, but he suggested the same thing and how quickly that company backed off the wokeness in that scenario and dialed it back. So remember, if you have a portfolio and investments, you as an investor have a voice, and you may need to lead the charge with other investors to go after any executives that turn woke for any investments you have in your portfolio. Anyways. All right, Trisha, my gut tells me the local MP and mayor needs to be investigated. Just had Omar here to cut a deal to fix up the wharves to handle more ships. Okay, I don't know what that means, but Trisha, give me some more context. I think I know what you're getting at, but I don't want to guess too much. How do you manipulate the populace? You create a new religion. Yes, but that's not the new religion, David. The new religion is the progressive cult, right? Identity politics, postmodernism, which is all kind of the same thing, the oppressor versus oppressed. And because when you can get people permanently in a state of victimization, they'll do anything. Why? Because fear is the number one motivating emotion. And that's why you see so much fear around this stuff. Like, oh, the planet's going to end. Or, oh, everybody's a racist and whatever. It's because they're just trying to manipulate people on fear. And that's one of the main tenets of this progressive secular religion. And I guess that's kind of that's a justification for why maybe many people do need religion, right? Maybe when in the vacuum of traditional religion, that many human beings will replace it with a new artificial religion, which is what they've done. And many people, theorized during the Cold War and even after that communism is not just a political ideology, but it's also religion, right? Because you have a devotion to the collective. You're no longer an individual. You're part of the collective, and the greater good for the collective is what's prominent. That's why I lose my mind when I hear people say the greater good. I'm like, what? Do you know nothing about history? Like, do you know where that's coming from? But anyways, it is what it is. Karen says, I have electric heat at my house up north, and it's terrible. I wanted natural gas, but it's not even available where my house is. Outside of major cities, natural gas isn't available, or at least in Ontario. Karen, you're a bigot. That's what that means. Because that's going to be the next thing, right? If you want a gas stove, this bourgeoisie sort of luxury tool, then you're oppressing minorities because, what's it called, IPOCs, whatever, most affected, therefore you're a bigot. That's how this religion works. It's pretty simple, right? The ideology is very simple. You can pick it up in half a day. Just oppressor versus oppressed. But anyways, Jesse says, I have asthma and have never lived anywhere near a gas stove. Jesse, you're a bigot. See how this works, right? You say anything I don't like as a progressive, you say anything I don't like, you're a bigot. like 5-year-olds are not even this clownish, but those are the people who are in charge of of many of our institutions right now. And then we have conservatives who just, bend over like Ace Ventura when he's talking out of his ass and just take it. And it's just really frustrating that nobody has a spine. All right, let me scroll down here. Have you read about Dr. Hammer in Germany, who traced back the origin of asthma to when people were being suffocated in previous generations? Gene transfer, Dr. Hammer was naturally shut down. I don't know. That doesn't sound... listen, I'm not a scientist, but I'm kind of a sciencey type of nerd. That doesn't sound... But maybe I'm wrong. I could be completely wrong. Who knows? And all of this brings me to, I mentioned in the last live stream that when I was in Boston, there was a talk that I actually just retweeted. I think Greg Foss just posted the article on behalf of the guys in mass adoption. They hosted Jason Lowry. And for those of you who didn't see my last stream, Jason Lowry, absolutely brilliant. I didn't really know much about him. Like, I'd heard his name many times online because his platform's gotten quite big. or at least his name recognition has been quite big. He's been had many meetings at the DoD, Department of Defense, and even the White House and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This is not political. We all know Biden's a fool. I don't know what his opinions are. I never will know because he's an active service member. Active service members don't get political when they're real. So I'll never know kind of what his opinion is, and I don't really care. That's not the point. But he did talk about something that was very interesting, and I think we've lost light, and this might upset some people, but, hear me out. He addresses this issue of something that we were all taught or propagandized with during our childhoods for the past couple of generations. The hippies taught us that war is bad. And I think when we have these binary views of anything in the world, it's really detrimental. Things are not good or bad. Things are on a spectrum. Sometimes they have utility. Sometimes they don't have utility. And depending where it plots on that will determine whether it's, in my opinion, good or bad, given the situation. And what he was discussing as part of towards the end of his presentation, I don't remember if it was in the Q&A section or during the presentation itself, but he said, we often forget what are the benefits of war because that's intrinsic and natural to us, whether we like to admit it or not. And not just to us, all species around the world. That's their method of conflict resolution. We're a little bit more advanced where we can use, conversation and debate and logical arguments for conflict resolution. But most species in the world don't have that ability. And it's just pure projection of physical power, as he calls it, or violence is how they settle disputes. And we're no different. We are, in that respect, we're different, obviously. But this whole notion that we have that, no war at any cost, like, no. That's an oversimplification. And he explains, I think, quite well that the reason, the utility of war and conflict and the projection of physical power, that's what's led to a world that is decentralized. That's what's led to, no, my brother's calling. That's what's led to to having all these different countries around the world, all these different jurisdictions around the world that have different governance/belief systems. If you ever watch James Burke's series, which I mentioned before, Connections, he starts off on the very first. Hold on, hold on. My brother is messaging, and he's saying, "Where is your truck?" And I'm gonna say at the mechanic in a live stream. Sorry about that. If not, he's gonna keep calling me. So, because of war and the projection of physical power, we have options. We have options, or like we look at North Korea and we say North Korea is a hot mess. It's a dumpster fire. But at least, stop with it. Ecamm keeps doing this, linking my thing. But at least it's isolated, right? It's not good for the people who are in there. But it's good for the rest of the world that North Korea is isolated within its borders. That's because of war. War is what allows that to become achievable. That's what Bitcoin is in terms of decentralization. There's not one individual or God king that controls the world, right? There's no pharaoh that's, he talks about the pharaohs, but there's no, Gilgamesh, Naram Singh or whatever that controls the world. There's many different countries, so there's options for people. In the United States, it's even better because you have more autonomy within the individual states than other countries around the world, right? So it's not necessarily a negative to discuss the benefits of the projection of physical power. And Freedom Convoy was just one step in the projection of physical power. That doesn't mean it has to be violent, by the way, when we say projection of physical power, because he's getting into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is the projection of physical power digitized, at least the monetary layer, which is just the base layer, but there's so much more to it that can improve the world beyond just the financial aspect. And that's why it's a benefit for governments to forget the financial part, look at all the other benefits that it has for those who like or dislike. And, as the extremists around us start to get increasingly more brainwashed, and the gas stove is an example of the next attempt of brainwashed, we have to understand that they're being radicalized. And we need to do two things. Multiple things. We need to be able to reach out to them. We need to be able to talk to them as well, and kind of try to reach them. That's what I'm trying to do with my book. That's what I try to do with some of my interviews with people who are not necessarily on my side of the political spectrum. But at the same time, we need to get beyond this fear of projecting physical power. And again, I'm not saying violence and pushing and whatever. Physical power can be debate. It can be also the ability to speak openly and say, no, I'm not buying into your bullshit anymore, right? People need to stop getting away, because that is the importance of this. That's what's given us autonomous regions and countries around the world, is our ability to push back and to speak up. And we need to speak up. And maybe sometimes it sucks. And some of us don't like conflict. Hey, I don't love it either. Sometimes you got no choice, right? So we saw that with the Freedom Convoy. And I think that's also why we need to step away from censorship. That's why I said some things a few days ago about somebody who I think is a moron, for them to take the bait, because that's my line in the sand. You're not going to allow me to dictate what words I use. No, I will fight to the death for that. And that line in the sand needs to be drawn for everybody so they understand. The reason the woke left is able to encroach on all our lives is because everybody's just trying to they're just some idiots, just ignore it. No. Now you need to speak back respectfully. And you don't have to get, confrontational necessarily, but you need to say, no, there is a line in the sand now. Now you're not crossing it. And I think what we're starting to see, this is the good part, is that's what's happening. We're starting to see regular people, the normies, as we like to say, who are starting to wake up that, you know what, this is not completely logical. I'm done. I'm finished at this point, right? We've gone too far. But we also need to push back. We need to say, not only is this too far, we're going to go back to the world how it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever, where, obviously we are inclusive of everybody and we're respectful of everybody. But the descent into postmodern subjectivism, we're done. We're done. Nobody is going to tell me what I do or do not say. And you need to be able to be willing to sacrifice for that. That unfortunately, that's how life is. We've been spoiled for a couple of generations, in the Western world, not the case in the third world, but we've been spoiled here where we haven't had to push back. Well, guess what? Now we do, because we haven't pushed back all this time, and the woke supremacist religion has grown so powerful that it's infected all our institutions. It's like anything else, right? If you delay and you procrastinate, it gets worse. Well, that's what we've done. We've procrastinated. It's gotten worse. All of this to say, don't be afraid to push back and to speak up against the woke supremacists. And if you're a shareholder in a company that is going woke, then reach out to other shareholders, find people who have significant investments in that company, and start suing them like crazy. The directors, the CEO, whatever, sue them. Not only the corporation, sue them personally for violation of their fiduciary duty. Will you win? Likely you won't even go to trial, right? Likely they'll back down and you won't need to. But you need to project physical power, and you can do that utilizing our legal system against these woke corporations. And if all of us start doing that across the world, or as many of us as possible start doing that across the world, and they realize there is personal sacrifice and personal expense to them by joining the woke supremacist mob, then the whole thing will crumble. All right, that's just my my personal opinion. I hope that helps. And I just jotted a couple of notes here. The other thing is, when I explain drawing the line in the sand and that you won't dictate what I say, that is kind of my interpretation of free speech absolutism, right? And inevitably, somebody's going to come along and say, oh, but what about talking about, World War II and the numbers are off? Can I say that? That's an NPC. As soon as you talk about free speech absolutism, and the first person to speak up cites the Holocaust, that's an NPC. That's somebody who has been primed, who has some sort of deep-rooted programming in them. That's all they obsess over, and they don't understand the difference between people wishing that we just be respectful of one another versus just being an NPC and being programmed to regurgitate that every time, right? And those people are not helpful. Those people are not on your side or our side as well as the people who say things like when you see a little bit of conflict, the people who say, oh, don't say that, let's be nice to people, let's not do that. That's a coward that's afraid of confrontation. And a coward that's afraid of confrontation should not be around an environment where confrontation is sometimes necessary. It is. You can't push back without any level of confrontation, whether it be a debate or speaking or whatever. It's just a part of life. You can't avoid it. It's a very, spoiled Western view of the world that I can go through my life without it having any confrontation. So, anyways, I hope that all helps. So, start suing them. Start filing lawsuits against them. Find some people with deep pockets who can help with doing that. And you need to project physical power or digital power or the power of, when I say physical power, I'm also referring to speech and pushback and groups of people coming together. That's how you'll put an end to the woke supremacists. Because you know who's not going to do it? Your government's never going to do it, right? We always talk about, at least from my perspective, that I want a government not to dictate what people should and should not say, because they're grossly incompetent. So they are not going to do that. The government is not going to do that. That's why the Freedom Convoy was there, because everybody in government is a coward. People who are opposition are cowards. And, that woman, Christine Anderson, she said as well, thank you to the truckers for giving us hope. And while that was a nice emotional plea, I thought, well, then maybe you should resign your position, because your job is to be a leader, right? Your job is to be the one who sacrifices and leads the way for the rest of us. That is what political leadership is. So, anyways, that's just my take. I know that's probably not going to be popular with some of you, but I'm sorry. I have no patience for people who are cowards and people who are victims, and it irks me so much. I hate weakness. Weakness drives me absolutely crazy. Okay, so let's go. I've never believed in the CV, in the narrative, nor do I believe the legacy media, academia, Hollywood, the government, the medical establishment. It's called discernment and using my critical thinking skills. Yeah, but David, you can't always disbelieve everything, right? Like there are some times, this is why I like Scott Adams. There are some times where things will come out of the legacy media that are true. There are some things that will come out of alternative media that are fake, right? Like it's not perfect on either side. Like I agree with your sentiment. I get it. But I think we also need to be able to not just, collectivize a group, and whether it be academia. Like, for example, Stephen Hicks is in academia. Jordan Peterson, until recently, was in academia. Gad Saad is academia, and an authoritative figure in academia. So we don't want to put him in the same basket as the rest of the woke supremacists. So we need to differentiate between the two. So I do understand the sentiment, but there's also something called a bias towards being overly skeptic, and then you don't get any information, right? So this seems the gaslighting is a default comeback to challenging facts. I think it's more name calling, right? And just like what I did before. Oh, you're against stoves. You're a bigot. You're a bigot, right? Because what is the name? The EPOC. I know they have the acronym for people. POC. I don't know. Whatever. Who cares? I'm so confused with the acronyms from the postmodernists that I just don't even. I don't really care anymore. All right, let me just go through here. Oh, the German politician that spoke for Trudeau, a verbal spanking. Yeah, but she was also paid for it. So learning a little bit of what was going on behind the scenes, and I'm really not impressed. But I think there's gonna be an article on that coming out sometime soon, and it just goes to show don't trust any politicians. Yes. And you got to ask yourself why. Why? Is this a propaganda tour for everybody? Is that what that is? Because if you think it's all genuine, I'm sorry, you're mistaken, unfortunately. That's just the way it is. There's no reason for, why would any politician do that? Like, remember, David, where's the skepticism, right? David, we need your skepticism now. Why would a politician from Europe come here to speak about Trudeau, which has nothing to do with her job or any of her stuff, right? Why? So, like all things, the best way to learn the motivation, especially in politics, to understand the motivations is follow the money. Where's the money coming from? And I think if you follow the money, then you might be a little bit less enthusiastic. I think people, I don't want to see, I don't know, who's a politician you like here? I don't know. Let's take Pierre Poilievre, for people who like him. It's a little different because he's leader. Well, let's assume before he was leader, right? When he was, what's that guy who was in the, Larry Brock was doing the parliamentary thing. What if Larry Brock was going to, I don't know, Europe, is going to, I don't know, Austria, let's say, and he's going to go and give a speech and make the Austrian prime minister look bad. Does that sound normal to you? Because that's exactly what's happening in this case. So there's a massive grift going around all over the place, and there's millions of dollars changing hands at your expense, by the way. And Sonia, tickets, $250 to $500. Okay, where's that money going to? Right? Where's that money going? Right? No. This is not natural, and I would advise them against proceeding with this event myself. But don't ruin a good thing. But well, they ruined the Freedom Convoy, so the political class is very good at ruining lots of things, right? So disheartened now, how divided the country is now, and this is how they want it, and it definitely needs lots of change. Jessica, I don't know. I don't think it's quite so divided. I think it's divided amongst the political class, and they're all trying to divide the rest of us, but I don't think it's working because I see more and more people amongst the normies. Normies are people who watch, mainstream media and are busy with their daily lives, who've opened their minds towards, the Freedom Convoy, the idea of freedom. For example, one of the people who's, I don't think she's here now. I don't want to say it's her private thing, but she, her husband bought books for many people in their families. My book, this book here, Honking For Freedom. All the the positive stories from the convoy that gave us hope, honkingforfreedom.com. Anyways, so they bought, I don't know how many copies of this book to give to members of their family. And many members of their family were not in support of the convoy, were supporting vaccine mandates and all that sort of stuff. And these people are unvaccinated. And she sent me a message yesterday. She says, "You're not going to believe it. My brother-in-law has turned. He's now on our side. He now understands what we were crying about for 2 years about the mandates and freedom and all that sort of stuff because he read this book." So I don't think the division is amongst those of us who are engaged in our daily lives, who go about a regular life, go to work, deal with our families and friends on a regular basis. We're not divided. We may have some differences of opinions, but, we're all kind of support each other and we'll disagree on some things. But the division comes from the systemic political class that works to create artificial divides in our society. And I think it's starting to collapse. Dave, I love you. I'll see you tomorrow, brother. And I think it's going to get weaker and weaker as time goes on. That's why I'm doing this live stream and doing interviews, and there's many other people doing the same thing. Yeah, I did the interview with Megan Murphy, which was released last week. And she's another example of people we probably would never have spoken to each other 6 years ago. And here we are talking to each other, emailing each other and whatever. So I think we're less divided than ever, to be entirely honest. The only people who are divided are the political class and they're on-the-ground activists / propagandists. And they're doing that because they're paid to do that, right? Or they're just so ideologically subverted that they've bought into this religious belief system called progressivism, or the woke supremacists, as I call it, and that's it. And by the way, the woke supremacist, Justin Trudeau, is a woke supremacist as well. And the reason I say Justin Trudeau is the most racist person to hold office in Canadian history is because the underlying philosophy that drives Justin Trudeau is exactly the same underlying philosophy that you would have seen from the KKK in the South 60 years ago, right? It's all identity politics around one particular race. The only difference is the KKK had an in-group preference. Justin Trudeau has an out-group preference, but they have the same worldview, which is they're just obnoxiously racist, and all they see is race. Justin Trudeau is racist in the inverse direction. The KKK is racist in the outward direction, but it's the same philosophy. It's the same people. And this is what liberals need to understand, why they're no longer liberal. They're not. They've become the very enemy that they say they're fighting against. That's who they've become. And I'm gonna mention that quite frequently on these streams, just so people get it through, not you guys, most of you understand this, but people on kind of the liberal side, that they start to understand that you want to see the enemy, the racist person in the world, look in the mirror. Because if you're the one who's doubling down on identity politics and having policies based on race, that's what the KKK wanted. They wanted policies based on race. Well, now they're doing their dirty work, right? So we need to explain that to them. And different people got to accept it in different ways. Sometimes it's a little more soft. Sometimes it's a little bit more firm, depending who you're talking to. But, and that's how we'll grab people who are liberals and pull them out of the echo chamber that they've found themselves in, who probably, this is why so many of them are confused. Bill Maher is a good example. If somebody's confused, he doesn't understand, how am I surrounded by all these people who are supposed to be supporting me, yet we have these just blatantly racist views. That's why, right? Well, I'm sure lost friends and family members, but they are all for jab. They drink the concoction if they could. I think it's so bad. Yeah, because they're just bought into narrative messaging, persuasion messaging, good marketing. repetition. This is why they say it over and over again, much like they did during World War II, when the Germans said the reason we need to put this group of people into the Germans, but the German government at that point, we need to put those people into camps is because of typhoid. So it's for their safety and for our safety. Everything is always for safety. I always say the Berlin Wall was for safety. All the extreme things. So somebody said in a presentation recently, I can't remember what it was, but that public health is fascism. That's what public health has become, right? It's corporate and public merger to dictate what you can and cannot do or say. That's fascism, right? Should be pointed out, too, that the KKK was predominantly a democratic institution. It was exclusively. It was the militant wing of the Democratic Party at that time, right? So then once again, that side of the political spectrum is struggling with their obsession over race. And Justin Trudeau, much like the KKK, is struggling with his obsession over race, which is what makes him a racist. Jessica, my first time listening to you, and so far I'm hooked. Oh, thank you. That's very sweet of you. Thank you for standing up for what you believe in and talking to all of us. I'm trying to stand up for what we all believe in, right? And that also means, Jessica, if there are going to be times where we have difference of opinions, that's great. We need to have differences of opinions. That's what makes life interesting. That's what makes an interesting conversation. It doesn't always have to get heated, but yes, sometimes for example, console versus PC for gaming, Corvette versus Mustang in cars. I'm a big car person, right? Life is more interesting when we have differentiating opinions and we can learn from one another. This presentation I saw with Jason Lowry, you talk about learning. I love those sorts of presentations when somebody comes up and they're like, wow, I can't believe this is a brilliant way of looking at things. And his thesis around, just to explain to you briefly, for those of you who weren't there, Jessica, I'll explain this to you. So I don't talk about Bitcoin very much here, although I've had people asking me want to explain it. So this is not about Bitcoin per se, but Jason Lowry he was United States Air Force, then he shifted over after 9 years to the United States Space Force. He's a computer scientist, I guess, of some sort, and serving in the military. And he's now writing his thesis at MIT. So smart guy, really smart guy. On my Twitter feed, you can see his presentation. And he's figured out a way to explain Bitcoin to people in government. Why proof of work, which is the infrastructure of Bitcoin, you don't need to know what that is, but why that is such an advantage to the entire world. And the conclusion of his thesis, and it's really quite in-depth, but it's basically that infrastructure is the new internet. And why is that important? Because this apparatus, Bitcoin, is decentralized. So there's no Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg controlling it, right? It's distributed across servers all over the world. So no individual company, individual person can act as a god king. No government can control it. Why is that beneficial to governance? Because much like the analogy that he gave that I've borrowed here, when he talks about sovereign states are the result of warfare, which allows a decentralized planet, that we have different belief systems in countries all over the world, and there's options. That also means there's independent electrical grids all over the world that are interconnected. And as we adopt this new internet, it's going to bring all the nerds who are developing the technological revolution, and it's going to allow them to focus on improving the electrical grid at lightning speed, because they're going to shift over to say, okay, your electrical grid is monitored with computers that are 60 years old. Let's make this more efficient. That's what's going to help solve the energy problem that we have, not so much in the Western world right now. And this is not an anti-fossil fuel thing. I'm not, again, obvious. Listen, you give me a supercharged V8 and a stick in any car, I'll take that over any Tesla, even though I love Teslas. But this allows governments to say, oh, so if I want to improve my electrical grid at virtually no cost to me, to my government, let's say I'm the United States or Canada, I want to improve the electrical grid. How do I do this? I adopt this decentralized internet infrastructure, and then the nerds are going to come over and start consulting and improving and building startups that will help completely revolutionize the electrical grid in Canada, right? And that'll happen in countries, and the benefit to this is to the third world, right? Where places like Dominican Republic still has regular brownouts. Countries around the world have regular brownouts. This will solve that problem. So it's an amazing video. You got to watch it. If you have a concept of the structure of computer language and programming, how it works, which I'm not a computer scientist, but I did have a pet emulator from the age of 3, and I've had a computer my entire life and had to learn throughout the years how computers are structured. So for me, maybe it was a little bit easier to understand, but I think in general, the thesis would be easy for anybody to understand, at least his conclusion. So thank you, Jessica. I appreciate the wonderful comments. And when I say things that you disagree with, don't hate on me. Just disagree. Tell me why you think you disagree, and we'll continue to love and respect each other. Risa, I shared the video of Jason speaking with my family. Oh, great. Hopefully they watch. And did you watch it? What did you think, Risa? I'm curious, because Risa, by the way, is I don't even want to call you a new Bitcoiner, but you became a Bitcoiner when we met each other after the Convoy. Risa was one of the many people who saw that Bitcoin was the only money that got through to the truckers, and understood that, okay, it couldn't be frozen, it couldn't be controlled by the government, despite what the fake news CBC said. And so she's one of those people who went out and started to learn, and now she's like a regular Bitcoin expert. And she's I love it. I'm still new. Oh, yeah, and Risa, I don't know if you're going to be coming to Bitcoin Canada. The Bitcoin Canada conference this year is going to be in Toronto, and, I spoke at Bitcoin Miami. I'm going to be a keynote speaker apparently at Bitcoin Canada, and I think it's June 7th, if I'm not mistaken. I'll send you all the details as we get closer on. I'll be talking to all of them as we get closer, and I might do a book signing at the Bitcoin conference. So come hang out. It'll be great I'm sure I'll see you before then anyways. I'm going to try to get out to the next Bitcoin meetup in Toronto, whenever it is. I'll talk to Fi, see when it is. Parts per million increase of greenhouse gases in the upper atmosphere isn't capable of altering our climate. Funny thing is, they had to resurrect that already debunked theory. Yeah, it could be. Listen, I remember learning about Milankovitch cycles in, was it junior high school? When we learned about ice ages and what are potential causes for ice ages, and how Milankovitch cycles change. I mean, look, I know it was the Paleolithic era. I can't remember which one it was. I would get them confused. When the entire planet was a tropical paradise. Well, I don't think the dinosaurs were driving around in SUVs, and that caused the change in temperature. So there's a lot of factors at play. It's a multivariate analysis. It's a multivariate problem. It's not just one thing that causes it. So anyways, amazing. I would love to come. I will book off work. Okay, cool. I'll let you know when it is, and hopefully we'll see you. Anyways, I think I'm gonna shut it down here in a second now. Megan, BJ, can you do locals stream on Bitcoin? Remember, you need to explain it to me as though I'm Homer Simpson with a crayon in my brain. That's my listen. I've helped my people of my parents' generation just to give them the very basics. What is it? There's so much, like the techie nerds. We like to get really, really specific, and that loses people. And I get that. I can do it really kind of basic, and I'll figure out a time. I want to do this. I mentioned this is the last thing I'm gonna say before we shut down, but. I mentioned that at the end of the year, a good friend of mine died, and went to the funeral because all of my family were away. So I was the one person to kind of represent my parents. And this is a family friend, very close family friend, who I grew up with. And So the rabbi at the funeral home told an amazing story that's from the Mishnah, and I'll explain what Mishnah and Talmud are. It's kind of like Jordan does his biblical series, and that's not what I'm doing. I don't have that capability, but I did suffer through 14 years of Hebrew school and the Old Testament and many of those stories. But we focused, when you're a kid and you're learning that in religious school, you kind of learn the lessons and the wisdom from some of the stories that are in the Old Testament. Some people get confused that the Old Testament it's not supposed to be, it's supposed to be informative, but it's supposed to be more of a story. The Old Testament, people say, the Old Testament, there's violence. Sam Harris does all the time. Oh, the Old Testament was terrible and blah, 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 and the lessons of the Old Testament. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not the lessons. Those aren't the lessons you're supposed to live by. You're supposed to live by the Talmud. And then the Mishnah interprets the Talmud. The Torah is just a story of how people got the original 10 Commandments and 613 rules of Judaism. But the Talmud is what kind of explains why, and the Mishnah is the rabbinical interpretations of those laws. So that's why you see so many Jewish lawyers, by the way. So we learned this as a little kid. Anyways, I don't know where I was going off with that, but the point is, in all of this, it was an amazing story that I think is relevant to the Freedom Convoy and what we were dealing with. And it was very interesting that there was, despite us being white supremacist and blah, 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 that there was many, during Pastor Hildebrand's services on Sunday, clearly there was a very large Christian, there was a Mennonite community there, many different sects of Christianity came, many Christian conservatives. You also had religious Jews that were there. There was a whole congregation of them, and everybody was intermingling together and loving each other because it's so cold, right? And just trying to follow the wisdom of the lessons of theology and what the good things that it's taught us about being kind to each other and being strong and loving each other and all that sort of stuff. So I'm gonna do one of those, and I'll do that, and I'll also do a Bitcoin thing on locals for you, Megan, and for whoever else wants. And I promise you, Homer Simpson will understand, and maybe we can do something collaborative at some point and set up a wallet. And I'm not saying anybody should take all their money and put it into Bitcoin. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is you need to learn about it, at least understand it. And if you want to put a little bit of money into it, a couple of $100, whatever, doesn't matter. Just put something into it as like an additional safe haven. Think of it as putting cash under your mattress. You're going to put digital cash into a Bitcoin wallet, but it's the same thing. Paula, what is Locals? Paula, if you go so Locals is a free speech platform. You're on Facebook. It's perfect for you. It's where it was created by Dave Rubin, and it now merged with Rumble. So it's kind of like the Patreon of the free speech Patreon platform that I can live stream to. I'm live streaming right now on Locals and on Facebook and on YouTube. And you don't have to worry about censorship on Locals. It's a free speech alternative. So you build a community. I have a community. People, that's how they support me. So I can do more and more of this. The more support I'm going to get, the more I can do of this. And you sign up, and the community is honkingforfreedom.locals.com. So the name of my book, .locals.com. And Jesse, money, what money? Hey, listen, we can all say that. I remember, and it's, by the way, something to talk, the last thing, and I'll cut it off. I remember during the GFC, the global financial crisis, in 2007, the progressives, the postmodernists are trying to get us to all be suckered into this binary worldview of oppressor versus oppressed, and they're trying to identify as white people as the oppressor and everybody else is oppressed. That's because they're racist bigots. But they also do the rich 1% versus everybody else. And I got to tell you, man, I learned down there, meeting a lot of very, very wealthy people, that is further from the truth. And I remember specifically being out for lunch with my friend and one of his clients. And one of his clients is a multi-billionaire. owns a lot of property all over the world, very successful guy. And the global financial crisis had hit. Liquidity was frozen. Loans and refis were frozen. And so we went out for lunch with this guy. And he's crying. He pulls up in an Aston Martin, a brand new Aston Martin. Has a collection of cars. And he was complaining about money. And my friend said, listen, I understand money's tight for everybody. How are you complaining about money? He said, you're so, because my friend set up all his corporations and all that stuff. And he says, what do you think? What do you think? It just grows on trees for me too, for everybody? He says, let me put it this way. My business is sustainable with, I can't remember the exact number. It was something like up to a 20% or 25% vacancy. It could have been a different number. I can't remember. And he said, I now have, I don't remember the number he said, but let's say he said 40. I now have a 45% vacancy across the board. You know what that means? I have to write a check for $30 million every month. That's my deficit. My deficit from my businesses is $30 million every month. How long do you think I can do that? Until I become insolvent and go bankrupt. So we all have the same problems. They're just different monetary values, right? It's a big house, but not even that big of a house, right? So his house is definitely bigger than my apartment and many of our houses. But it was all the same problems. That's why everybody is so worried about an economic downturn in 2023. And we buy into the postmodernist, simplistic binary worldview that people who are wealthy just kind of sit on the top and living at large, and the rest of us are all suffering. And Elon Musk addressed this in his interview with the Babylon Bee. He said, I'm the richest man in the world. He's like, it's all in my company. It's all stock in my company. It's all artificial numbers. If my companies go bankrupt, I'm as poor as everybody else. But people just often don't have the level of sophistication or experience running a business to understand that that's how it works. So don't buy into those sort of binary worldviews, whatever they are. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. But anyways, Callum, great show. You're really getting good at the live stream. Oh, well, thank you. Well, Callum, let me know when you think I'm good enough to upload it as an audio podcast. I still think I was hoping to do it around 100, but I think I need more practice. I need to polish it a little bit more. Excellent point, BJ. Now we have to figure out how to turn lemons into lemonade 100%. And that's what positive framing does. Positive framing allows you to look at all the good things in life, and the negative things are just challenges that we have to fix. And we all have the ability and the adaptability and the intelligence to address these problems. And if we don't, we have friends and family and loved ones around us that we can reach out to. And also, you have this whole internet thing. So you have a problem in your life, let's say a financial problem. Like I'm dealing with my QuickBooks nightmare for my year end. So I just spent a couple of hours watching QuickBooks tutorials because I needed to tweak and fix some things. And that's it. So you also have the broader internet to reach out to people. And all of you who are in the comments, who are talking to each other, you all have each other, right? Many of you over time are going to start to form friendships and get to know each other. Risa has seen that happen amongst Bitcoin. And that's something that we didn't have as a tool in generations in the past. So we've never had it so good. So I think there's so much for us to be positive and happy for. Alberta Blue Sky, don't be too polished. Your quirks make you human. 100%, man. Listen, I love the flaws. I don't like corporate polished nonsense. It's my problem with scripted politics. So I'm with you 100%. Books is the worst. I use it at work. Oh, man, it makes me miserable. I was listening when I was driving back from Boston in my truck. I was listening to QuickBook tutorials the entire time. Just because I got to get a little bit better, well-versed into what things were, because we had some issues. My bookkeeper had some issues last year. He got divorced. He was not available and whatever. So anyways, yeah, I hear you. Okay, I got to leave there. I got to leave it there. Remember, one of our friends, and I'll ask her if we can mention her name one time, she used this book to turn her in-laws who were against all that stood for in the Freedom Convoy and Freedom, and they've now changed 180 degrees and are now on our side. That's why there's very little conflict at all in this book. And this is all the true and positive stories that people across the spectrum should embrace. And this reminds people on the liberal left, that they've forgotten the value system they're supposed to believe in, which is peace, love, and freedom and acceptance of ideas that are different from theirs. Those are the lessons that are in this book. And for those of you who read it, I really appreciate it. For those of you who don't, I recommend it. And those of you who read it as well, share it with people who don't necessarily agree with us. At least it'll help engage the conversation. And this is what I'm going to be focusing on for 2023, is reaching out to people on the other side and utilizing this. Appreciate your honest outlooks. Thank you, Nisha. I just try to, and listen, a little confrontation is good. A little bit, not too much, right? Positive morning, positive things coming my way. Just need to stop letting people steal my time. Yes, and I don't know if you use an iPhone. I use Focus. There's this Focus feature in iPhones, which is sometimes people get frustrated, can't get a hold of me. It's because I have a whole different structural layer on different focuses for time tracking and allows me to focus on the task. Because if not, I get easily distracted. And I highly recommend it. We can talk about it at some point. Cheryl, good morning. And Cheryl, I'm just about to shut down, but you can watch it again. I hope what I said has resonated with all of you. And the future's going to get better. Everything's going to get so much better. There's going to be bumps in the road. There's no question. Like, look at this whole Davos thing. It's now seen as a joke. The whole world's now laughing at them, making fun of them. It's going to become to a point, I think, over the next couple of years, where people are going to be embarrassed to go to Davos, right? And if we do that, then we're winning the battle. You know what focus means? I don't know. Am I missing a funny joke, Jesse? I don't know. All right, listen, I love you all. I gotta run. Be good to each other. And those of you who are starting to talk to each other in the comments, try to pay attention for people who might be a little bit lonely, who need some people to talk to. Let's be there for each other. And that's how we're going to build a positive life of greater freedoms. So, all right, I got to run. I love you all, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.